Hello everyone, welcome. I'm going to go back to an issue that I have talked about in two previous videos, and that is the issue of women in politics, and to express my disappointment once more, but I will deal with that in detail, and also something that is in a way connected with women in religion. And I was going to talk about women in politics first, but I thought that perhaps I have just been watching a video on this topic that people have been talking about for about 2 or 3 days, and that is the issue of Sister Whihermina, an African-American nun, the foundress of a sisters, a religious order of Benedictine sisters. If I don't know whether I'm getting all my facts right here, but apparently she died in 2019, and now the sisters wanted to take a relic or something from to put it, something belonging to her, to put it in the altar or somewhere. I'm not too sure of the reasons, but anyway, they opened her humble wooden casket in which she had been interred and found her whole body totally uncorrupt. And it is open now. I believe this is in Missouri, the United States, and it is now open in a glass case, and people have been coming to see it. And it will be open, displayed, I don't know if that is the right word, but for people to see it with their own eyes until today, Tuesday, the 30th of May, 2023. Then she will be interred again, and it's not obviously officially a miracle. People are calling it so, but a miracle in the Catholic Church is not really officially proclaimed a miracle until the Church finally investigates all other possible interpretations, explanations, and so on. The calls for sainthood and so on, for miracles, always originate very much in the Catholic Church, bottom up, as it were, and then people ask, and then the Church investigates, and so on. But one true thing is that her body is uncorrupt, and I find it fascinating, really, that this is happening when men at the same time dressed in as women are going to parade themselves in the LA Dodgers stadium, mocking nuns, mocking Christ also, because I believe that they're going to do something with the crucifix. Better not go into that. Atrocious, anyway. So perhaps the body of a black nun, foundress of a convent, who died 4 years ago and found uncorrupt, may tell us something. Let's go back to the issue of women in politics. I have 2 videos. I got the title written down in case you want to watch them again. One was, the title is, "Where Have All Real Women Gone? No inspirational political leaders today, mediocrities all." And that is from about a month ago. And then I have another, "Men may fight with fists, but boy can women fight with words." And that was about 2 weeks ago. And I keep coming back to this issue, how women are missing the chance to speak to people, not to their minds, but to people's hearts. which women can do, I believe, a little bit better than men can. So once more, women in politics, mediocrities all. My first question is, why are they all so angry? They all appear to me to be so angry, no sense of humor at all. None of them angry. Are they missing something? And if so, what are they missing? What is it that they lack besides this inability to speak to people's hearts? Not only do they lack the ability to laugh at themselves, but punish those and censor those who dare make fun of them, however flimsily. I'm going to pinpoint some of them as examples. But this is really for all of them. Now, William Congreve, remember the dictum, "Heaven has no rage like love to hatred turned, no hell fury like a woman scorned." This is from the Morning Bride, written in 1697. A woman, all women, we all seek admiration, to be admired. We do. Yes, men do too, indeed, but especially politicians. Admiration to them is a reward. But women need it. In this case of women, it seems that they have to be angry, if only to convince themselves of their power. And they all nevertheless radiate this self-satisfaction. Their consciousness never bothering them, it seems. To me, they all seem like second and sometimes even third rate, because they're not using their strengths as women, but merely imitating men. Let me give you some examples of what I mean by second or third rate. Outside, as an example, outside of this realm of women, men, and so on, Balzac, the French author, wrote extensively, and you see where I'm going with this, wrote extensively in his novels about class differences. To bring him up to date a little bit, he was talking about the working class and the middle classes and the upper classes and the aristocracy, and he was referring to this 18th century class structure in France, but in all of Europe. Aristocracy in those days, or in today's terms, those at the top, and the working class in those days, the people who did manual work. But in between these two, there was a middle class that he addressed. Of course, Marx himself also would talk later about this middle class and working class and middle class. Also, as you're going to see, portraying the middle class as betrayers of the working class, because they always wanted to be with the ruling classes, even though they were not of the upper classes. So this middle class, both Balzac and Marx despised them. Now, who are they, this middle class? Now, let us define the terms first, because in America you speak of the middle class in the same way as in Europe we speak of the working class. It used to be that the working class were those that did manual work, that worked with their hands. If you, in those days, 2 centuries ago, if you worked in an office a century or more ago, you were middle class. But of course, in those days, before computers and telephones and typewriters and calculators, you had to be highly educated to work, let's say, in an office. Nowadays, we could say, however, that if you work in an office, let's say as a secretary or something along those lines, you are perhaps part of the working class. The working class defined more generally as a term that encompasses those who need to work for a living and not necessarily through manual work. You need a paycheck at the end of the month, let's say. Now, Balzac laughed in his time at the middle classes and mocked them. He called them the bourgeoisie, the bourgeois. So did Marx. Because he felt, speaking solely of class, he felt that they gave themselves airs and graces, pretending not to be part of the working people from where they came. They were discouraging their origins as working people, and they wanted to be like the upper classes. They wanted to imitate them. And the term bourgeoisie comes from the French, the French bourgeois, that, well, a person from the province, as it were, who came perhaps to the city of Paris, and of course they lack all the sophistication and so on. It wasn't necessarily the country hick as such. It was those provincials who gave themselves airs and graces and thought that they were part of the aristocracy, but not quite, and they were not accepted as such. So someone who had come from the provinces and saw themselves as part of the city leading classes, wanting to be part of that club, a club to which they did not belong, and worse, that did not want them there. So important to keep this distance between, he points out, the sophisticated Parisian and the country provincial. And Balzac disparages them for their continuous imitation and emulation of those above them in those days, in that social class spectrum. And Marx also disparaged them for having betrayed the working class from which they came, their origins, as I said, looking down on their origin, and wanting to unite which and form part of a group, the ruling class, that did not want them there either. But so they both use the term, disparagingly, the shopkeeper, the mentality of the shopkeeper. Now, Balzac, as I said, mocks them continuously. And to paraphrase the words of the other Marx, Groucho, because they insist in wanting to be part of a club that does not want them. Balzac is full of contempt for these people because he sees their thoughts and their actions and their imitation and points out to the fact that, in his view, is based on resentment. This is how he puts it. They look at their betters and are full of resentment for not being truly part of them. They envy their confidence. I have it written down here. Let me read you the. They envy their, that is the upper classes, their confidence, their ease, their habit, and the habit that they have their money and position give them of ordering people about. They just take that for granted. It's the way they take their place in the world for granted, their servants and their prestige for granted, and they envy that, which they themselves would like to deny but can't. It's all that. And he says, this secure Grumble, one of the in the novel, he himself had envied his securer friends their power of ignoring the humanity of those who were not of their class. To do that really well, one must always have lived in order for it to become part of you, to feel comfortable in it. One must always have lived in a large house full of clockwork servants. One must never have been short of money, never at a restaurant ordering the cheaper menu instead of the more delicious. One must have always regarded a policeman as anything but one paid servant there to protect them. They never for a moment doubt their divine right to do whatever they want within the accepted limits, but exactly what they like, without further thought to anything or anyone but themselves and their own enjoyment. Anyway, he's pointing out the difference here between those who are truly at the top of the class ladder, as it were. For them it comes naturally, and those, the middle classes, that are always attempting to imitate them, but they know themselves they're not quite there, and so there is a resentment created, a little bit of envy there. So we are dealing here with people that are not part of the club, but very much want to be part of the club. Do you see where I'm going? Now, women. I see the same parallel here, but instead of upper class, middle class, working class, I see this as I see these women in politics today as the equivalent of the middle class imitating men. And that is what I dislike about them. I feel that they're all being played in a certain way in their insecurities. Let me give you a few examples. I've got them written down. Because I am not very good with technology, I don't know how to edit videos, and I would love very much to put a picture of each one of them. Most of them you know anyway, but I don't know how to do it well, so you will just have to look at find them and look at their picture, but most of them you know. Let me start, okay, with Annalena Baerbock. I see them all as provincial contessas. She is the German Minister of Foreign Affairs, and she is a member of the Greens Party. I see her very much, she's a young lady, I see her very much as a sort of a queen bee, you know. She just went to Saudi Arabia, and total lack of diplomacy or anything, gave them a little book that she wrote, 80 pages, which is kind of like a pamphlet, about feminism in foreign policy. And she gave these to the Saudis. Anyway, she has this attitude of I am that I am, very young. she said that she doesn't care about what the people of Germany say or feel about it. The war with Ukraine will go on and so on, regardless, she said, of what the German people think, because that is the right thing to do. And when asked about it, she kind of snorts with indignation. I don't think that this is hypocrisy. I think it's a question of middle-class vanity. I have tried to go to Balzac and try to find sentences that he says that can sort of describe these women. And for Annalena Baerbock, I found this one. This is from Balzac. Wants to perform the solo part in her concerto of self-praise. I think that's fantastic. So that is Annalena Baerbock. Okay. Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. It's sort of a matron type, sort of a carpenter bee too. She's not very bright. She, in my opinion, she has a sort of a lesser intelligence than the average. Always rather prettily turned out, but she wages her finger at you all the time with a certain tone of superiority, always a chronic contempt for anyone else. There is something peculiar and almost sad about these people who are not very bright, and in their ignorance they feel superior to everybody else. Who else? Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States. She's more like a drone, I think. I went to Balzac again and said, okay, what can I find here? Because he's going to put it much better than I can. I found this. Should have been an apprentice to some useful trade. She only has to be shown a precipice to cast herself immediately over it. The brightest of the brightest stars, the salt of every intellectual dish. Sanna Marin, the former Prime Minister of Finland. Young, she lost the election. They call her the dancing queen because she used to be forever dancing at night at nightclubs and so on. Very young. What is obvious with her was always her willingness to oblige. These young women are chosen. They all go to the Young Leaders Apprenticeship Forum within the World Economic Forum. They have these young people and they groom them. Okay, I see her as a bumblebee a little bit. Impeccably the butler. Another cultivator of me. She really lacks dignity, that dignity that comes from inside, from the nuns actually, rather than trained effort. Balzac says, her presence, not of her, but in her presence added nothing to the well-being of her country, and her absence will take nothing from it. How about Jacinda Ardern, of former, again, Prime Minister of New Zealand, lost the election? I see her as a little woman, as sort of a honeybee, a carpenter bee. It's your typical woke. You feel the active radiance of her goodness when you are near her. Feels very profoundly about all subjects while she's speaking about them. Balzac says, such a good friend that she'd throw you into the river in order to fish you out again. Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Bank. The European Bank is that bank that goes to third world nations and tells them what to do and what not to do. You shall sow this crop because our corporations here want you to do that. That is what they want and that is what they need and that is what you shall do. And if not, you will have no financial aid whatsoever. It's more like a wasp. And one of those who confuse high cynicism for confidence or wit. Balzac would say, you can cross a river on a log, but not on a piece of wood, on a chip of wood. She does have self-control and composure, and never misses its opportunity to demonstrate. Money never misses its opportunity to demonstrate its stupidity, says Balzac. She may feel regret when she fails, never remorse. It is someone like her that you could say, keep your paws off me. Janet Yellen, Secretary of Treasury in the United States. Again, I went to Balzac for help, and this is what I find. Either the time for her to do something meaningful has not yet arrived or has already passed. The routine of the routine. Her eyes usually are sad in expression, but full of hidden bitter thoughts and regrets. Tears spring to her eyes and dry instantly. Patrice Cullors, that is the president of Black Lives Matter, they got, I believe it was almost 100 million in donations, and they are now apparently bankrupt. She or her friends are in possession of many mansions worth millions and millions of dollars. I don't know what happened there. A killer bee. The quote that I found for her would be, those who talk in abstract terms, the abstract love for humanity, which is always, at the end, love of oneself. It is always the self, oneself, that one loves. Seducers whose motives are mean can never really understand magnanimous minds, and they abuse those magnanimous minds. I have two more. Nancy Pelosi, former speaker, no conscience there. Balzac would say, possesses bravado rather than courage, possesses cunning rather than cleverness, swagger rather than elegance. I'm sure she has never earned her servants' goodwill, something essential for parasites to have. Yeah, a parasite. There is a secret hatred there, submerging her hatred under a flood of virtue signaling. They never forgive those that do not fear their power. Ultimately insecure, I think. Well, we'll end up with Hillary Clinton, former winner. Okay. I've heard someone said many years ago that she had changed, in that before, when she was first starting, she wanted money in order to gain power. And then there was a change, and then now she wants power in order to gain money. She walks proudly into a room, her head up, like those martyrs entering the Colosseum, except that her head up signifies arrogance rather than dignity. The battle between her instincts and her reason makes her unjust and tyrannical. The sentence that I found in Balzac is, suffered eclipse in that flood of glory, for her election of 2016. That was too much for her, just like certain people who get drowned in their bath. She sees herself as the undisputed oracle of Delphi or Washington. It's always a feeling of revenge there. Well, those are my quotes that I got from Balzac. I have to express what I do feel is that they are incompetent. Ursula von der Leyen, for example, whatever she touches turns to a disaster. She had been Minister of Defense for Germany, and that was a disaster. They had to let her go. And so now they're talking about moving her. There are rumors that she might be in the list for NATO, the leader of NATO. God help us if she gets there. Anyway, let me know. I'm just so very disappointed about these women, imitators of men. I hope this is the last. I don't think this will be the last time I speak about them. Let me know what you think. Bye-bye.